I'm carrying a secret that's heavier than the baby growing inside me. My husband thinks this child is his, but it's not. Have you ever had to smile while your whole world was crumbling? Because that's what I do every morning when David brings me prenatal vitamins and talks about baby names. He's so excited, so proud, and I want to disappear. I'm Sarah, and I'm pregnant with our church bishop's baby. I need to tell you how this happened. Not because I'm looking for forgiveness. I don't deserve that. But because maybe if I say it out loud, it'll stop eating me alive from the inside. It started in March. David and I had just gotten back from our second fertility specialist. Another round of tests, another conversation about why my body wouldn't do what it was supposed to do. I felt like such a failure, as a woman, as a wife. David tried to comfort me on the drive home. It'll happen, Sarah. We just have to be patient. Patient. I'd been patient for 2 years. Patient through every negative test, every well-meaning comment from church members about when we were going to start our family. Patient through watching every other woman in our congregation announce pregnancies while my womb stayed stubbornly empty. That Tuesday, I was supposed to meet with the Easter program committee. Nothing major, just planning decorations and coordinating the children's choir. Normal church stuff. But when I got to the church that evening, the other committee members had all canceled. Messages about sick kids, work emergencies, the usual. I should have gone home, should have rescheduled. Instead, I found myself sitting in the sanctuary, staring at the cross and just breaking down. That's when Bishop Matthews found me. Sarah, his voice echoed in the empty church. I saw your car outside. I wiped my eyes quickly, embarrassed. I'm sorry, Bishop. The committee meeting was canceled, and You don't need to apologize for being in God's house, he said, sliding into the pew beside me. Not too close, but close enough that I could smell his cologne. Something expensive. Clean. Michael Matthews had been our bishop for 5 years. He was magnetic. That's the only word for it. Mid-40s, graying at the temples in that distinguished way. Married to Rebecca, who was always perfectly put together but traveled constantly for her job as a pharmaceutical rep. Want to talk about it? He asked. And God help me, I did. I told him everything. About the fertility treatments. About feeling broken. About David's endless patience that somehow made me feel worse instead of better. I told him things I hadn't even told my best friend. He listened. Really listened. Not like David, who always tried to fix things or make me feel better. Bishop Matthews just absorbed my pain. Infertility is one of the deepest wounds a woman can carry, he said when I finished. Hannah wept bitterly for the child she couldn't have. Rachel envied her sister. You're in good biblical company, Sarah. The way he said my name. I should have noticed it then. The slight pause like he was tasting it. Would you like me to pray with you? He asked. I nodded, and he placed his hand on my shoulder. His touch was warm, steady. I closed my eyes and listened to his voice asking God to heal my pain, to bless our marriage, to open my womb. When he finished, I felt lighter, like maybe God had actually heard me for the first time in months. Thank you, I whispered. Anytime, Sarah. My door is always open. That became our routine. Every Tuesday after that, I'd find a reason to be at the church. Sometimes it was legitimate, committee work, decorating, helping with Sunday school prep. Other times, I just showed up, and somehow Bishop Matthews would appear. We'd talk about faith, about marriage, about my struggles with infertility. He shared things too, about the pressure of leading a congregation, about Rebecca's frequent absences, about feeling lonely in a crowd. People see the position, not the person, he told me one evening in April. Sometimes I wonder if anyone really knows who I am. I was organizing sheet music in the choir loft. He was sitting in the front pew, still in his suit from a board meeting. The church was empty except for us. I know who you are, I said without thinking. You're the man who listened when I needed someone to hear me. Something shifted in his expression then. Looking back, I think that was the moment. The crack in the wall we'd both built. Sarah, he started, then stopped. Shook his head. You should probably head home. David will be wondering where you are. But I didn't want to go home. Home meant another night of David being understanding about our empty spare room. Another night of pretending I wasn't dying inside every time he talked about when we have kids. He's working late, I said. He won't even notice I'm gone. Bishop Matthews looked at me for a long moment. He should notice. A man should always notice when his wife isn't there. The way he said it, there was something underneath. Something that made my stomach flutter in a way that had nothing to do with morning sickness, because this was months before that. May came and went. Our Tuesday meetings continued, But they changed, became more personal, more intimate, even though we never touched beyond that first prayer. He'd ask about my marriage, about whether David truly understood what I was going through. "Does he hold you when you cry?" he asked one evening. "He tries to fix it instead," I admitted. "That's not what you need though, is it?" No, it wasn't. What I needed was someone to acknowledge my pain without trying to make it go away. Someone to sit in the darkness with me, instead of constantly trying to drag me into the light. Bishop Matthews understood that. He understood me in ways my own husband didn't. The first time he hugged me was in June. I'd just gotten another negative pregnancy test that morning, and I was falling apart in the church office. Without a word, he pulled me into his arms. It should have felt wrong. It should have felt like crossing a line. Instead, it felt like coming home. He whispered into my hair, "I've got you." And for the first time in months, I felt safe, understood, like maybe I wasn't broken after all. That hug lasted maybe 30 seconds, but it changed everything. Neither of us acknowledged it afterward. We went back to our routine, talking, praying, me slowly becoming addicted to the way he looked at me, like I was precious, like I mattered. David looked at me with love, yes, but also with pity, with the careful concern you'd show something fragile. Bishop Matthews looked at me like I was a woman. July brought longer conversations, deeper confessions. His marriage was struggling too, he admitted. Rebecca was gone 3 weeks out of every month. They'd grown apart, become strangers sharing a house. "Loneliness is a terrible thing," he said one evening. We were in his office this time, door closed. I was helping him prepare Sunday's bulletin, but we'd long since abandoned any pretense of work. "Yes," I agreed. "It is." Our eyes met across his desk, held. That was the night I knew I was in trouble, real trouble. That was also the night I should have stopped going to those Tuesday meetings, but I didn't, because for the first time in years, I felt alive. May 15th. I remember the date because it was the night I stopped being the woman I thought I was. Rebecca had been gone for 2 weeks on some pharmaceutical conference in Denver. David was pulling double shifts at the accounting firm, trying to make partner. And I was spending more time at church than at home. I told myself I was just helping. Bishop Matthews seemed so overwhelmed with Rebecca away, managing the household, preparing sermons, dealing with congregation issues alone. Someone needed to support him. That's what I told myself anyway. Vieras were sent to porting. I arrived at 7, ostensibly to help organize the youth group fundraiser files. But really I just wanted to be near him, to have his attention, to feel like I mattered to someone. The church was completely empty. Even the janitor had gone home. Just Michael and me in that big, echoing building. We worked in comfortable silence for a while, but I could feel the tension building. It had been growing for weeks, this electric current that ran between us whenever we were alone. Little touches that lingered too long. Eye contact that said things we couldn't speak aloud. "Sarah," he said suddenly, looking up from the papers scattered across his desk. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Do you ever think about what your life might have been like if you'd made different choices?" The question caught me off guard. "What do you mean?" He set down his pen, leaned back in his chair. "If you'd married someone else. If you'd taken that job offer in Seattle before you met David. If you'd, I don't know, just lived differently." I studied his face. There was something vulnerable there, something raw. "Why are you asking?" "Because I think about it." His voice was barely above a whisper. "I think about it more than I should." My heart started racing. We were walking into dangerous territory, and we both knew it. "Michael." It was the first time I'd used his first name. It felt intimate, forbidden. "I know," he said. "I know we shouldn't be having this conversation, but Sarah, I can't pretend anymore that what I feel for you is just pastoral concern." The words hung between us like smoke. Once spoken, they couldn't be taken back. I should have left then, should have grabbed my purse and walked out of that office and never come back. Instead, I said the words that sealed both our fates. "I feel it too." Something shifted in his expression. Relief, maybe. Or resignation. "This is wrong," he said, but he was standing up, moving around the desk toward me. "I know." My voice sounded strange, like it belonged to someone else. "You're married. I'm married. I'm your spiritual leader, for God's sake." "I know." I was standing too now, facing him. We were maybe 3 feet apart. If anyone found out, he ran his hands through his hair, it would destroy everything. "Your marriage, my career, the church." "I know," I whispered again. "Then why can't I stop thinking about you?" The anguish in his voice was palpable. "Why do I look forward to Tuesdays more than anything else in my week? Why do I lie awake at night, wondering what it would be like to—" He stopped himself, but I knew what he was going to say, because I'd been wondering the same thing. "Sarah, tell me to leave. Tell me to go home to my empty house and forget this conversation ever happened." I looked at him, really looked at him. This man who'd become my refuge, my confidant, my escape from a life that felt too small. This man who saw me not as David's struggling wife, but as Sarah, just Sarah. I can't, I admitted. That's when he kissed me. Ron, what a king ain't a smen. Ron wasn't gentle or tentative. It was desperate, hungry, like we were both drowning and each other was air. I kissed him back with 2 years of frustration and loneliness and need. When we broke apart, we were both breathing hard. We have to stop, he said, but his hands were still on my face. Yes, I agreed, but I was already reaching for him again. The second kiss was longer, and when his hands moved to my waist, pulling me closer, I didn't resist. I melted into him like I'd been waiting my whole life for this moment. Not here, I whispered against his lips. He nodded, understanding immediately. His office had windows facing the parking lot, 2 exposed. The youth room, he said, in the basement. We barely made it down those stairs. He kept stopping to kiss me, pushing me against the wall, both of us knowing we were crossing a line we could never uncross but unable to stop ourselves. The youth room was dark, private, just old couches and motivational posters about God's love. The irony wasn't lost on me. What happened next? I can't describe it without sounding like every other woman who's ever justified an affair. But it wasn't just physical, it was emotional, spiritual even. Like we were 2 broken people making each other whole. Afterward, we lay on that awful plaid couch, my head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat slow down. What have we done? He whispered into the darkness. But I wasn't thinking about what we'd done. I was thinking about how, for the first time in years, I felt complete, like I'd found a piece of myself I didn't even know was missing. I should feel guilty, I said. But you don't. No. I traced patterns on his chest with my finger. Should I? Probably. He was quiet for a moment. I don't either. We stayed there for an hour, talking in whispers, touching each other like we were memorizing every detail. When I finally had to leave, David would be home soon. Michael walked me to my car. Sarah, he said as I opened the driver's door, this can't happen again. I knew he was right, but I also knew he was lying. We both were. I know, I said anyway. This was a mistake, a moment of weakness. We'll pray about it, ask for forgiveness, and move on. Of course. He leaned down, kissed me one more time, soft, lingering, full of goodbye. I'll see you Sunday, he said. See you Sunday. I drove home in a haze, showering to wash away the evidence but not the memory. David was already asleep when I slipped into bed beside him. That was 15 months ago. It happened again the next Tuesday, and the Tuesday after that, and every Tuesday since, except for the few weeks when Rebecca came home early, or David was suspicious. By January, I was pregnant, and now here I am, carrying a secret that grows bigger every day, just like the baby inside me. The hardest part isn't the guilt, it's the acting. Every Sunday, I sit in that third pew with David's arm around me, listening to Michael preach about truth and righteousness, and I have to pretend my heart isn't racing. I have to pretend I don't know exactly how his hands feel on my skin, or how he whispers my name when we're alone. David squeezes my shoulder during the sermon, protective and proud. He's been doing that more since we found out about the baby, this unconscious claiming gesture, his wife, his child, his perfect little family. If only he knew. Rowold's the morning sickness has been brutal, but it's also been my shield. When I can't eat dinner because I'm nauseous, David assumes it's pregnancy hormones. When I cry watching a commercial about baby formula, he thinks it's just emotional swings. When I can barely look at him some mornings, he brings me crackers and ginger ale and tells me it'll pass. He's so good to me, so patient, and that makes everything worse. Last week he surprised me with a crib, came home from work early, all excited, asking me to close my eyes. When I opened them, there it was in our spare room, this beautiful white crib with little yellow ducks on the mobile. I know it's early, he said, wrapping his arms around me from behind, but I saw it at the store, and I couldn't wait. Our baby's going to sleep right here. I stood there staring at that crib, and all I could think was, what if the baby has Michael's eyes? What if it has his nose, his chin, his dark hair instead of David's light brown? Sarah, you okay? I realized I'd been quiet too long. It's beautiful, I managed. Perfect. I was thinking we could paint the walls, something neutral since we don't know if it's a boy or girl yet. His hand moved to my belly. What do you think, little one? Yellow? Green? The baby kicked then, like it was responding to its father's voice. Except David isn't its father, and that kick felt like accusation. I've started avoiding Michael's calls. When he phones the house and David's at work, I let it ring. When I see his number on my cell, I delete the voicemail without listening. But he's persistent. Tuesday meetings have become torture sessions. We still meet. Stopping would raise questions, but everything's different now. The intimacy is still there, crackling between us like live wire, but it's layered with panic now. We have to talk about this, Sarah, he said 2 weeks ago. We were in his office, supposedly planning the Christmas pageant, but the costume sketches lay forgotten on his desk while we stared at each other across an impossible divide. There's nothing to discuss. There's everything to discuss. You're carrying my child. The words hit me like a physical blow. We'd both been thinking it, but hearing him say it out loud made it real in a way that terrified me. No, I said firmly. I'm carrying David's child. That's the truth. That's the only truth that matters. Sarah, no. I stood up, started gathering the papers. David is this baby's father. David will raise this baby. David will love this baby. That's how this works. Michael was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was strained. What if it looks like me? The question I've been asking myself every night. The question that wakes me up at 3 a.m. in a cold sweat. Then we pray it doesn't, I said. And if our prayers aren't answered? I looked at him then, really looked at him. This man I'd fallen for. This man I'd betrayed my marriage for. And I realized that somewhere between that first kiss and this moment, he'd become a stranger again. Because the Michael I thought I knew would have found a way to make this easier. The Michael I'd imagined would have had answers. Instead, he looked as lost as I felt. Then we live with the consequences, I said. But living with the consequences is harder than I thought. Last Sunday, Rebecca came back from another business trip. I watched her walk into church, all polished and professional, and take her place beside Michael in the front pew. The perfect bishop's wife with her perfect hair and perfect smile. She nodded at me during the passing of the peace, the same pleasant acknowledgement she'd given me for 5 years. No suspicion. No knowledge that the woman 3 rows behind her had been sleeping with her husband for over a year. How are you feeling, Sarah? She asked after the service. David tells me you're expecting. How wonderful. Thank you, I managed. We're very excited. When are you due? The simple question felt like a trap, because if I tell her the truth, mid-August, anyone with basic math skills could work backward to January, to the time when she was in Denver, and Michael and I were meeting 3 times a week instead of just Tuesdays. Late August, I lied, adding 2 weeks to the due date. Still early days. Well, you're glowing. Pregnancy suits you. I wanted to laugh, or cry, or confess everything right there in the church foyer. Instead, I smiled and thanked her, and let David lead me to the car. The lies are multiplying, not just to David and Rebecca, but to everyone. My mom calls asking about baby names, and I have to pretend I'm not terrified about what this child will look like. My sister wants to throw me a shower, and I have to act excited instead of sick with dread. Even my doctor doesn't know the truth. When she asks about the father's medical history, I give her David's information. Family history of heart disease, not the bishop's family history of diabetes. Blood type A positive instead of O negative. Every choice feels like another lie, another brick in a wall I'm building around the truth. But what else can I do? Confess everything and watch my marriage explode? Destroy David's faith, his trust, his love? Destroy the church that's been our community for 8 years? Michael called again yesterday. This time I answered. We need to meet, he said without preamble. No, we don't. Sarah, I can't do this anymore. The pretending, the lies, watching you every Sunday knowing what? I cut him off. That we made a mistake? That we hurt people we care about? That we have to live with it? Knowing that you're carrying my child, and pretending it belongs to another man. It does belong to another man, I said. David's name will be on the birth certificate. David will walk the floor when it cries at night. David will teach it to ride a bike and help with homework and pay for college. In every way that matters. This is David's baby. Biology matters too, Sarah. No, I said. Love matters. And David already loves this baby more than either of us ever could. The silence stretched between us. Finally he spoke. I dream about it sometimes. The baby. About what it will look like. About holding it. Stop, I whispered. About being its father instead of just, stop. I was crying now, big ugly sobs that I hoped David couldn't hear from the kitchen. You can't think like that. You can't want things that will destroy everything. Then what do? We pray, I said. We pray that when this baby comes, it looks like David. We pray that God shows us mercy we don't deserve. And we never speak of this again. I hung up before he could respond. Tonight, David is reading parenting books in bed beside me, taking notes in the margins like he's preparing for the most important exam of his life. Every few minutes he'll share something interesting, about sleep schedules, or feeding routines, or how to baby-proof the house. He's so ready to be a father, so eager, so devoted already. And I'm lying here counting weeks, doing math, praying that when this baby arrives, it will have David's blue eyes and his gentle smile, praying that love will be stronger than genetics, praying that God will let me keep this one secret forever. I'm 36 weeks pregnant now, and I've become obsessed with genetics. Not the kind you learn in high school biology, the real kind, the terrifying kind, that determines whether your secret stays buried or explodes your entire life. I spend hours on websites, reading about dominant and recessive traits, eye color inheritance patterns, facial feature genetics, hair texture probabilities. Like I'm studying for a test where failure means losing everything I've ever loved. David has blue eyes, light brown hair, fair skin that burns easily, a narrow nose and a gentle jawline. Michael has dark brown eyes, black hair that's going silver at the temples, olive skin that tans beautifully, strong features, a Roman nose, defined cheekbones, a cleft chin. The baby needs to look like David. It has to. Last week at my 34-week checkup, Dr. Martinez asked if I wanted a 3D ultrasound. It's not medically necessary, she said, but a lot of parents like to see the baby's face before delivery. David's eyes lit up immediately. Can we? I'd love to see what our little one looks like. Our little one. The words still cut deep. I want it to be a surprise. The truth is, I'm terrified of what that ultrasound might show. What if I see Michael's nose already forming? What if the baby's profile matches his instead of David's? David was disappointed, I could tell, but he squeezed my hand. Whatever you want, sweetheart. A few more weeks won't hurt. A few more weeks. That's all I have left to hold on to this lie. The nursery is finished now. David spent last weekend installing the changing table and arranging stuffed animals. He bought books, dozens of them, classic stories he wants to read to the baby. My dad used to read to me every night, he told me, holding up a worn copy of Goodnight Moon. I want our child to have that same memory. I watched him practice reading aloud to my belly, his voice gentle and soothing, and I had to leave the room, had to lock myself in the bathroom and cry as quietly as possible. Because what if this baby grows up looking nothing like the man reading to it? What if in 5 years people start commenting on how different the child looks from David? What if family photos become exercises in carefully arranged lighting and strategic angles? What if David starts to wonder? Michael cornered me after church last Sunday. Rebecca was in the restroom, and David was talking to the youth pastor about helping with summer camp. Sarah, he whispered urgently, we need to discuss what happens when… No, I cut him off. There's nothing to discuss. What if the baby will look like David? I said it like a prayer, like saying it enough times might make it true. It has to, and if it doesn't, I looked at him then, this man who'd turned my world upside down. Then you better pray God makes you a better actor than you've been lately. Because Rebecca's starting to notice something's wrong. It was true. I'd seen her watching him during services, a slight frown creasing her forehead. Michael had been distracted, stumbling over familiar prayers, losing his train of thought mid-sermon. The congregation probably attributed it to stress, but a wife knows when something's different. Maybe we should tell them, he said suddenly. Maybe honesty is honesty. I almost laughed. You want to be honest now? After 15 months of lies? After I'm 8 months pregnant? I can't keep pretending this baby doesn't exist. That it's not yours, I said firmly. Not legally, not emotionally, not in any way that matters. Biology matters, Sarah. No, love matters. Commitment matters. Being there matters. I was getting louder, and I forced myself to whisper. David chose this baby before it was even conceived. He's chosen it every day since. He's earned the right to be its father. Michael's face crumpled. And I haven't? The question broke something inside me. Because the truth is, in another life, maybe he could have been. Maybe we could have been a family. But not in this life. Not with the choices we made. You gave up that right the moment you decided you couldn't risk your reputation for the truth, I said. He flinched like I'd slapped him. The baby chose that moment to kick, hard enough that my whole belly shifted. Michael's eyes dropped to my stomach, and I saw longing there so raw it hurt to look at. I dream about holding it, he whispered. Stop. About teaching it things. About being its father. Michael, stop. What if it has my eyes, Sarah? What if it looks at me in church every Sunday and I see myself looking back? The question I've been avoiding. The nightmare scenario that wakes me up at 3 a.m. Then you'll have to live with it, I said. We both will. Rebecca appeared then, perfect smile in place, slipping her arm through her husband's. Ready to go, honey? I made reservations at that new place downtown. Of course. Michael's pastoral mask slipped back into place so smoothly it was almost frightening. Sarah, I hope you're feeling well. The baby should be here soon. Yes, I managed. Soon. I watched them walk away, the picture of a successful couple. No one looking at them would guess that their marriage was hanging by a thread, held together by nothing but habit and reputation. Just like mine, I suppose. That night, David and I were lying in bed when the baby started its nightly gymnastics routine. David put his hand on my belly, feeling the kicks and rolls. Active little one, he murmured. Just like you were at that age, according to your mom. I was an active baby. I kicked constantly, kept my mother up all night. Would this baby inherit that from me? Or would it be calm like Michael was, according to stories I'd overheard him tell about his childhood? David, I said suddenly. What if the baby doesn't look like us? He turned to look at me. What do you mean? I mean, what if it looks like neither of us? What if it's just different? He was quiet for a moment, thinking. Sarah, are you worried about something? Is there something you need to tell me? My heart stopped. This was it, the moment of truth. The chance to confess everything and let the pieces fall where they would. No, I whispered. Just pregnancy anxiety, I guess. He pulled me closer, his hand still on my belly. Sweetheart, it doesn't matter what this baby looks like. It's ours, made from love, wanted desperately. already so loved it takes my breath away, made from love. If only he knew. Besides, he continued, babies look like little aliens anyway. It'll probably take months before we can tell who it resembles. Months. I had months to hope, to pray, to bargain with a God I'd betrayed for the chance to keep my family intact. I'm going into labor soon. Maybe tomorrow, maybe next week, but soon. And when this baby comes, when the doctor places it in David's arms, my whole future will be written in the shape of its nose, the color of its eyes, the set of its jaw. I pray every night now. Desperate, frantic prayers that probably make no sense to God, but are all I have left. Please let this baby look like David. Please let love be stronger than genetics. Please let me keep this secret forever. Please let my husband never know how badly I've betrayed him. Please let this child grow up in a family built on love instead of lies. Tomorrow is Sunday. I'll sit in that third pew, David's hand protective on my belly, and I'll listen to Michael preach about redemption and mercy. And I'll pray that when this baby comes it will look like the man beside me. Ronner's the man who deserves to be its father. The man who already is in every way that should matter. I have to believe that's enough. Because if it's not, if this baby comes out looking like the man behind the pulpit instead of the man holding my hand, I don't know what I'll do. I don't know how I'll explain. I don't know how any of us will survive the truth. But maybe I won't have to find out. Maybe God will show mercy to a woman who doesn't deserve it. Maybe love really will be stronger than blood. Maybe prayers are enough to change genetics. The baby's kicking again. Strong, insistent kicks that say it's ready to meet the world. I'm not ready. I'll never be ready. But ready or not, the truth is coming.